Hey guys, it's time to go over all the books I got between end of August and now. It's a fall book haul. Hey guys, if you are new to my channel, welcome to The Book Path. I'm Nicole, and if this isn't your first rodeo, thanks for sticking around. As you can see, we are back on the floor today. Honestly, you guys are gonna have to let me know, like, do you like the videos more when I'm sitting like on the floor here with the books behind me, or do you like it more when I'm like in my chair and you guys can see kind of some of the decorations and everything? Like, let me know, because I know I've seen different videos that like do it different ways. So it's like, if there's one that you like more, let me know. I just realized, there we go. But yeah, so we are back on the floor. Luckily, I am cushioned right now. I have a nice, like, thick yoga mat and a nice fuzzy blanket because it is freezing today. It was like 20 degrees out this morning. And yeah, I know there are some places that it is, you know, they would love to have 20 degrees. That is great for them. I moved away from the snow and the cold for warmer weather. So yeah, but go ahead. We have a lot of books to go through. I think there's like 50, to be honest. I didn't realize that I had gotten that many books. Some I got because they were like readathon specific, and then I ended up either reading them or not reading them. Some of them I have read along the way, so we won't touch too much base on those, but I still want to cover them because they were ones that I got. So definitely make sure you get comfortable. I will try not to go into too much detail. Have something, you know, nice and hot and warm to drink. I have my nice coffee here because I might lose my voice halfway through this because, like I said, there are a lot. So bear with me. We are going to get through them and take them just a little bit at a time, at a time. We've got the piles around here. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to try to go through these in, I think, the order that I got them, from the oldest to the newest. And I am actually happy because I did start getting some very pretty books for my collection, which is, nice. But yeah, so the first one we got was Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. I read, can't remember where it is. I have one of her books somewhere behind me. Oh, right here, The Crimson Flower. And I really loved it. And so this is kind of like, not necessarily a prequel, but it's a story set in the same world of this like Asian inspired fantasy world with witches and magics and like, I think it's like poppy flowers or something, but it was really well done the first time around. So I wanted to go ahead and pick this one up. I've been having this on my list for quite some time, so it finally came into stock and I ended up getting it. So next up, I ended up picking up the hardbacks for Seven Faceless Saints and Disciples of Chaos by M.K. Lobb. The reason I did this was one of the first arcs I ever got was Seven Faceless Saints. And I read it and it was really, really good. So they had it on sale for like $5 getting the first one. So I figured, you know what, I have the art copy. Let me go ahead and get the regular copy, and then the sequel has come out. So I haven't read this one. Obviously, I've read this one here. But basically, you have a world that is run by, basically like a military regime. There is, I think there's a king or queen. It's been a while. But you have this kind of rebellion starting to take flight. There is also kind of a cult that worships this darker deity coming to fruition, and they may or may not have people set inside those in power. So you are having kind of all this going on, and then a murder mystery kind of happens. So you have this main character who she's trying to solve what's going on because she's fighting for this rebellion, and she runs into basically her childhood bestie that they had a falling out of, and he is now in kind of the government system. So he is kind of the enemy, and she has to kind of spy on him to figure things out. So there's also like romance. So I thought it was really well done. It kind of left off on a cliffhanger ending. So I'm really excited to do this. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this one, so I do recommend this book. So next up, I ended up getting Sons of Darkness by Gaurav Mohanty. I'm sorry if I messed that up. I had seen this basically on a bunch of booktube TBRs, and it just sounded really good. And once again, it's kind of like a political fantasy. There's a pirate princess, and just kind of this fantasy world. Like I said, I really don't want to go into too much because we have a lot to get through, but I did end up picking this one up. Next up is Revelations, which is book 2 in the Belmorte novels. I have book 1 somewhere over here. It's somewhere. I know it is. Oh, right up here. So I have Belmorte up over there. It is basically a vampire romance story where the main character also shares the name of the Count of Monte Cristo, which I thought was really interesting. You basically have all these houses of vampires. They run it like a reality TV show, like Real Housewives or something. And people try to audition to be basically the food source for these vampires that live there, and they live this life of glamour while they're there, and they get money and they get paid to do it, and then they're supposed to live these, you know, wonderful lives. And the main character, her sister, goes missing while serving at one of these houses. So now she is trying to audition to get into one of the houses so she can find out what happened to her sister. So there's like twists and turns going along the way, and this is going to be book 2 in that. So next up, because this author has made an impact on me with, I think it was The Shadows Between Us and Daughter of the Pirate King, which obviously is Trisha Levenseller. I have become a fan of her writing style, so there are a few books in here of hers. But the first up that I got was Blade of Secrets and Master of Iron. I really don't know much about the series other than it's her that wrote it. I feel like it's maybe going to be a little bit more Norse inspired. But like I said, I do like her writing styles. So I'm curious to see what these are going to be, and how they're going to, you know, go forward. So next up was a book I ended up getting for the Seasonal Spooky Challenge, and that was Midnight Feast. I started like a few pages of this, but I never ended up finishing it. So back on the shelves it goes. But basically you have this kind of resort that's been set up, and the locals are not happy about it. They're very spiritual people. They believe that there is like forest folk or something in the forest that protects it. And now with this kind of resort that's been built, it's not what they wanted. So there's people at odds in here. There's also apparently possibly a murder mystery that happens, and I know it's multi-POV. So I will get back to this because it does have that kind of murder mystery, which I like, and I've heard good things about it. But yeah, we didn't end up finishing this for the challenge. So next I got the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This had been on my list for a while, and I ended up getting it for the Seasonal Spooky Challenge. I ended up DNFing it. Sadly, I was just bored out of my mind with it. It was very slow paced. It didn't have vampires in the way that you would think. So I think I got like 200 pages in, 100 pages in, I'm not sure, but I was bored out of my mind. It did have some pretty like graphically gross scenes, but it just was too slow paced for me, and it just felt more of like kind of going through the day-to-days of stay-at-home like housewives for like the 80s and the 90s. And while I am a housewife and I am a stay-at-home, it was just kind of not one I wanted to really read about. So I did end up DNFing that. So next up, once again, was another book I got for a Seasonal Spooky Challenge. I ended up getting a few for them because I really don't read a lot of like horror and like thrillers and things like that. Mysteries I will, murder mysteries I will, if there's like something that harkens to like Halloween or Friday the 13th or something like that, where there's like a masked vigilante or something that's terrorizing. I'll read those ones I'm fine with, but I just tend to not read them that much. So the next book that I ended up picking up, like I said, once again, was for the Seasonal Spooky Challenge, and that was The Lake by Natasha Preston. I never got to this one, but this is kind of like a camp counselor thing, and so I don't know that the main characters are backed up after a certain amount of time. Something happened, and obviously as you read the book, the plot's going to unfold. But I never got to this one, so this one's back on the shelf to venture into when I need a spooky book. So next up, I ended up picking up the first two books in the Foxglove trilogy, and so that was Foxglove and Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I really liked those. I liked Foxglove more than Belladonna, but basically you have a murder mystery set to a period peacetime in I want to say England, but it's got kind of like, it could be England, it could be the Northeast of America, kind of those types of vibes. And I want to say it's turn of the century, so late 1800s, maybe like 1901, 1904, something, but I really want to say it's like probably 1880, 1890, maybe even like a little bit before then. But you have this girl who she can basically see spirits of the dead, and she knows that death kind of comes around the people that are close to her, and it basically sparks off a paranormal kind of romance with her and death, along this backdrop of murder mysteries. And once again, there's another murder mystery in here. This one, the reason why I liked this one better than Belladonna was Belladonna I felt was just a little bit more predictable, but it still is good, and you do have the entrance of another like paranormal deity, if you will. So there is kind of more past revelations going into here and how all the characters are kind of fitting together more than they realize. But I do recommend it. I will be looking for book 3, which I think is Wisteria, and that way I can finish up that trilogy. So next up was another book for the Seasonal Spooky Challenge, and this was actually recommended to me by the author herself, so I went out and got it, and that was Midnight Kiss by Farahilda Winters. I did go ahead and read this, and I think I gave it like 4 stars, 3 or 4 stars. It was decent. There was like, I would have wanted it was a thin book, and I almost would have traded that for something longer to get more into the backdrop of like the character relationships in there, because I felt like that was a little bit more lacking. But it did start to build up to that towards the end, and the plot actually really started to pick up towards the end, which I really liked. Left off on a cliffhanger, so I will be getting the sequel. But basically what I loved is you had this woman who, she works in a library and she works in the archives, and she comes across this like grimoire basically, and she's drawn to it, and basically the grimoire is magical and it's kind of having an effect on her. And this is also a grimoire that's sought out by different factions of paranormal entities. So she basically just unwittingly gets immersed in this paranormal world that she had no idea was out there. So it was really interesting. I did like it. I liked, it took a little bit to get into despite it being such a short book, but it did pick up. And so yes, I will be continuing with the series. So next up, I think I had a gift card that was gifted to me for like a birthday that I held on to, and I waited for a sale at Barnes & Noble, as one does. And so I ended up picking up, I think the next few books were ones that I got at Barnes & Noble at this time. And so the first one is A Door in the Dark by Scott Wrington. This one just sounded really interesting. You had like a magical world, magical schools, and kind of like a survival challenge going on. And when I got this, the girl at the register actually said she was happy that I got it, because she said a lot of people don't. She goes, it's actually a really good book. So I thought it was actually a pretty cool cover. It actually reminded me of the cover of like the 10th Kingdom book that came out like back in the day, and then they did like the made-for-TV movie on TV. It was like a short TV series, and it was fantastic. So if you haven't seen the 10th Kingdom, go and do it. It's like fairy tales gone warped, and it's fantastic. Before there was Once Upon a Time, and it was just really well done, and I loved that one. So I still want to read the book that was based off of. So this one just kind of gave me the vibes off the cover, and like I said, magical wizarding world and competition survival. I'm in. Next up was another book that the girl at the register, she said it was really, really, really good. And it's one that I'm hoping to get to, like if I can finish everything that I need to read for December, it's one that I really do want to pick up. And that is The North Wind by Alexandria Warwick. And basically, a mortal woman, an ageless god, a union that will save the world or destroy it. This is kind of a fantasy romance. That basically you have to survive in the winter, and there is basically an old deity, and it's kind of like, it says it's an enemies to lovers slow burn fantasy romance, and it's sprinkled with Greek mythology. So I find that really interesting, considering you don't see a lot of wintry themes with Greek mythology. So we will see what it is. I'm thinking, based off the fact it's wintry and dark, maybe it's going to be a Hades and Persephone, because that seems to be what a lot of people are doing, but I don't know. So I'm picking it up and I will let you guys know. I was going to say what I was going to read, but needed a sippy sip. So anyway, the next book that we ended up getting is The Rosewood Hunt by Mackenzie Reed. I ended up getting this one. It's I think it's a YA, and this is just basically, I almost want to say treasure hunt, mystery, clues, solve it, which hits all like my words for my little Scooby-Doo mystery solving brain, that puzzles, clues, whatever we need to do, find a treasure, solve a murder. I don't care. I love that type of theme. So ended up getting this one. And the last one that I think I got from Barnes & Noble at this trip was Champion of Fate by Kendara Blake. And this one I had heard good reviews on. And it's basically a female warrior on an adventure with battles and, or you know, things like that. And I just thought that was an interesting take about a female warrior being the main point in a fantasy, like, I don't know if it's gonna be fantasy epic, but in a fantasy series. And so I am here for it. And like I said, I heard really good things about it, so I wanted to pick it up. Move this pile up. And the next one we ended up picking up was another one for the Seasonal Spooky Challenge, and that was The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. This one I also got because I am a huge, huge fan of the old black and white movie with Rex Harrison and Gene Tierney. It is a small little book. I did end up reading it. This was 5 stars. It was slightly different from the movie. There was a few little spins that they took as far as the place setting. I think this one takes place after World War II, gives like 50s, 60s vibes, whereas the movie I think is turn of the century, because I think there's still like horse and carriages and the way that she dresses. And then in the book, she has like 2 kids. In the movie, she has 1 kid. And I can kind of see why, after reading the book, they decided to only go with the 1 kid because of what the other kid does. But this is fantastic. It is a classic. This was written, I think, in like the early 40s. And you basically have this widow who wants to kind of get out underfoot from the in-laws' pressure, and so she moves to this little seaside cottage that supposedly is haunted, and lo and behold, it is, and she meets the spirit of the old sea captain who built it. And just the little banter that goes on between them, the discussions of like afterlife, and then the budding romance that happens between them is just fantastic, and everything it needed to be in this short little book. And I loved it just as much as I loved the movie. So it was 5 stars. Highly recommend reading the book, watching the movie. They are fantastic. So next up is a book that was on my list, and I ended up getting it because I saw that it was like, I think it was like 50% off, because this one is like normally a pricey book, and that is the bind up All He'll Ever Be by W. Winters. And this one is kind of like supposed to be a very spicy kind of Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it's been popping up all over my Instagram, and it was like telling me I needed to buy it. And apparently it is supposed to be a very, very spicy one, but it's all like 4 books bound up in one. So she is chunky. I can't wait to get to this one, because like I said, everything that I was seeing pop up on Instagram for it was just, it had me. So, excuse me. So it will be on my list. Next up is one that I mentioned before because it is on my current T.B.R, and that was the pre-order that I did for Bloodguard. And obviously we have the wonderful sprayed edges. I know I went over this before. We have the end papers of the world, and then kind of that cover. And this is basically a kind of gladiatorial combat competition set into a Fey world where I think humans are kind of against Elven, and you have one guy who is entering the competition because he needs something. I think it's for his sister, and the only way he's going to make it through is with the help of, I think it's the Elven princess. And so it could be an enemies to lovers. I'm curious to see where it's going to go. Really interesting to see how they're going to do kind of the gladiatorial combat in here. But yes, it was a stunning book. I waited on for like a year or longer for this thing to come out. So hopefully it is going to be a really good read. But yes, it is one of the pretty books that I got. Next up, I ended up getting book 1 in the Madison Kate series, which is Hate by Tate James. This was another one that I kept kind of seeing come up on Instagram when people put like the little speech bubbles or little scenarios to kind of advocate for it. And it just captured me. And so I really wanted to kind of do that, because you basically had a woman that was left for dead. And the thing is that she's not dead. And so it's basically her going to go back and basically seek her revenge on the people who framed her and left her for dead. And I've heard it's supposed to be spicy too. So revenge romance, I guess. But yeah, it's going to be good. I think it's also a reverse harem. So I'm gonna pick it up. We'll see how it goes. I know this is like a big series, so. And obviously I have to go with a little JLA because, you know, my Blood and Ash like fanaticism. So I decided to go with the first book in the Covenant series, which is Half-Blood, and they had it with the sprayed edges. This is kind of like a YA romance, I'm assuming, where you have people learning how to use their powers. They're descendants of gods, and they have to like fight against, I guess, demons. But basically, it rubbed me as being, I don't want to say it rubbed me. Basically, it came across as like Percy Jackson, but like older. Like, if that's what makes sense. So I haven't read it yet. A lot of these books I haven't read. We are going to have some fun reads coming our way. But yes, so we'll see how this one goes and if we pick up the rest of the series, which we probably will because it's JLA. Next up is A Promise of Fire by Amanda Boucher. This is the first book in the Kingmaker Chronicles. Once again, this is just kind of, this is a fantasy where basically you have a girl who's disguised as a soothsayer in a traveling circus, avoiding her destiny of the gods and her dangerous family. So basically she has magic. She meets a warlord in a magic-deprived South, and basically she is going to have to, I think, work with this. So it's kind of an enemies to possibly lovers, where she might bring magic to his kingdom. I don't know, but it looked good and had good reviews. So next up, I ended up getting rid of the book 1 that I had for it because I found this for cheaper and getting the entire series, and that was the Serpent and Dove Gods and Monsters trilogy. So Serpent and Dove, Blood and Honey, and Gods and Monsters. I had heard interesting things about this trilogy. It's been on my list. I know it's one of the older ones. Don't know much about it other than it's probably going to be a fantasy romance series. But yeah, so we are going to be taking on this challenge at some point. So then I ended up going to my local Ollie's discount store, and they have, you know, I always check the books because sometimes there's some really good deals that you can get. And of course, these were no exception. I will have to take the bright glaring orange stickers off of them, but you'll be able to see kind of the prices that I got these for. So if you have like local discount stores, like I think even like the Dollar Tree's starting to have some good books every once in a while now too. But I ended up getting Chloe Gong's Foul Lady Fortune. I ended up getting this for $2.99. So yeah, I was willing to take a chance on this because this is kind of like a period piece in Shanghai. And I don't know if there's magic. I don't think there's magic. I think it's just like a period piece kind of done. Yeah, so it's not a magical series. It's basically like a period piece with spies and everything in the 40s in China. So, or pre-40s, so pre-World War II in China. So this will be very interesting to read and see. I've heard a lot of good things about Chloe Gong, so we'll go ahead and tackle that one. Next up was kind of a spin on, I think it's Snow White, but basically you have Poisoned by Jennifer Donnelly, and this one was $3.99, right? So I think this is basically Once Upon a Time, but kind of like a different thing. Like this is like Snow White, or Sophie as she's called in this one, kind of being a little bit more rebellious than the Snow White we know, and taking on the evil queen and what's going to kind of happen there. And I figured, you know what, I'll take a chance on it because it's going to be interesting. And apparently there's a series where maybe it is kind of like talking about different fairy tales from different characters' perspectives. And I always kind of like when they do that. We'll see what happens. Or maybe this is the story of the uprising of the evil queen. I'm not sure, but we're going to take a chance on it. So going along with the Foul Lady Fortune, there was another Chloe Gong book, and that was These Violent Delights. And I've seen this going all over BookTube. So I figured for $2.99, we're going to take a chance on it. And once again, this is kind of like a reimagining of Romeo and Juliet set in the 1920s in China as well. So I might actually try to read this one before Foul Lady Fortune, because if this one's in the 20s and that one's in like the 30s to 40s, I just, if there's going to be historical input, I kind of want to read it in like a linear timeline fashion. So I might read this one first. But yeah, $2.99, we're going to go ahead and take it because, you know, I do like my mafia type stuff as well. So another one that I picked up at Ollie's was the sequel to The City We Became, which I have not read, but I heard wonderful good things about. And this is The World We Make. This one was $4.99. But like I said, $4.99 for a hardcover, not that bad. I heard really good things about N.K. Jemison's first one, The City We Became, where basically you have people having the personification of basically a city, and how one of them is supposed to rise up to become the city, but this one has like 4 people. So they have to work together to kind of become the personification of the city in which they live. Like I said, it's a sci-fi. I'm not usually into kind of like sci-fi-ish stuff, but it sounded interesting. It had good reviews. It wasn't like super thick. It wasn't going crazy into like that kind of mecha world, because I just can't do like the machines and the mecha stuff and like spaceships and things. It's just not my thing. So, but this was just kind of a different, interesting take. So I wanted to go ahead and try it. And like I said, both books for, I think I got the other one for like at Ollie's for cheap too. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and try those at some point. The last book I ended up picking up at Ollie's was The Counselors by Jessica Goodman. I read this for Seasonal Spooky Challenge. I liked it. I wouldn't have really put it as like a horror for YA. For me, this was more of a murder mystery. You have the main character, a car accident in her past kind of disrupts everything in her life, and she's kind of become this social pariah in this like podunk kind of town, where the only big saving grace to the town is this very rich kind of summer camp that she has always worked at. And so she's continuing to work there, and kind of the found family that she has there, all set to the backdrop of a murder mystery that happens when a body is discovered at the lake, and just trying to figure out who it is, and how she finds out that everyone could be involved, and stuff at the camp is just, there's more than meets the eye. So I classified it more as a murder mystery, maybe suspense and thriller, maybe, but definitely I wouldn't say horror at all. But it was a good read. I do recommend it. It's not incredibly scary in any sense. It really is just kind of the mystery of it all. But a good read. I think it was like 4 stars, I want to say. Can't remember, read it a while ago, but yeah, so highly recommend. So next up, I needed to add to my Zodiac Academy collection because we're going to have them all, because I read The Ruthless Blades of the Zodiac and I absolutely adored it. I've read the first 2 books in the Zodiac Academy and I'm loving that. So eventually I will get to that series. I want to so bad. But I ended up picking up the prequel little novella for it, The Origins of an Academy Bully, which I did end up reading. And this is just basically how Orion becomes linked to Darius, and wasn't what I was thinking. It wasn't what I was thinking at all, but definitely you can see how they are in the Zodiac Academy series and what they're kind of working towards on their end, which I didn't understand reading the books because I hadn't read this yet. So now I understand that a little bit better. But it was really good. I think I gave it 4 stars for the novella because obviously you can't get much from the novellas, but yes. And then the other book that I read or that I picked up was Zodiac Academy, The Awakening as Told by the Boys. So my goal is that I'm going to set aside time sometime soon. I'm hoping in January, we will see, where I can get back into the Zodiac Academy world, and I will start off with The Awakening Told by the Boys and then continue on just so I can get like a little bit back into it. Plus, I am looking forward to it because I always love in dual POVs and multi POVs, especially with the romance. I love reading the guy's perspective because, you know, I don't get that in real life. I don't know what the guys think. I know what I think. I know what girls think, but I'm like, reading the guys' perspectives is always fun for me. So yeah, we will add these to the collection and we will keep going. So next up is another pretty book, and this one I did read, so I did kind of cover it a little bit, and that is The Games Gods Play. This was the one that threw me a bit of a curveball because I kept seeing it and I thought it was pretty, and then when I decided I wanted to get it, I couldn't find it anywhere, and I went to like all these different stores trying to find it and everywhere was sold out, so I finally ended up finding it. But yes, this is basically a world where the different Greek gods have had their war, and in order to choose who kind of rules over the gods, they hire, or they basically pick mortals of all ages and backgrounds to compete, and whichever mortal survives to the end and becomes champion, then the god or goddess that they represent is the new reigning king or queen of the Greek gods. And so this is the story of a girl who she goes for Hermes, which is kind of like the Thieves Guild, and she ends up getting actually chosen to represent Hades, who has not had a representative in the competition at all. And so you find out that there's some stuff going on behind the scenes. There is a plot afoot, and yeah, but I loved the competition aspects of this because you really felt like you were in the competition. It didn't be like, oh, this happened and then this is how I won, or this has happened and this. No, you are there with them throughout the struggles of the competitions, and kind of you start to feel for all the different characters because you realize why all of them are competing and what they're hoping to gain from it. So it was really well done. It was also a very pretty book because you had this one and you had these beautiful kind of Greek urn type artwork. You had the glorious end papers here, and then you had this, but it was just, I loved it, and it was another pretty book. So we read this one, loved it. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars, but I can't wait for the next one to come out. I think it's coming out obviously next year sometime, but I almost want to say like March or May, but we will be getting that one. So next up, because obviously I am a huge fan of Zodiac Academy, I wanted to try something new. This is a new book series that they're coming out with, and this is Neverkeep. Have not read this, but picked it up immediately. It says Fate Doesn't Favor the Wicked, a dark enemies to lovers romantasy series. So basically, I love the beginning, and it's I'm a wielder of hearts and a summoner of corruption, heir to nothing and born to a fool in the wrong damn month. So it is a fey kingdom. There's reapers, there's royals, there's mysteries afoot. And then it says, turns out fate doesn't favor the wicked. So it's obviously going to be a little bit on the darker side, as is with their stories, especially with their characters in the Zodiac Academy kind of world. So I don't know if this book is going to be part of that world. I think, from my understanding, it's completely new, completely different from the world of Zodiac Academy. So I will sometime get to them. Like I said, there's a lot of really good books on here that I want to get to. I just don't know when I'm going to get to them. But we're going to have a very interesting 2025 coming our way, because we're going to have some great reads coming on. So once again, we did go and get some other pretty books. And the next one up is Ruby Dixon's Bull Moon Rising. Now, I loved Ruby Dixon's Ice Planet Barbarians. I didn't want to, because I thought, hey, this is an alien romance, and it just looks like, from the cover, because they're big and tall and blue, like somebody watched some Avatar and had some fantasies in mind. So I wasn't paying it too much mind. It ended up getting picked up for a book club pick, and I read it, and I loved it. I now want to read the entire series. It was funny, it was spicy, it was just a really great thing. So, and I loved the way the writing style was. So when I saw that she was doing one where you fall in love with a Minotaur, normally, once again, I would think this would be just ridiculous, but the way she writes it, she makes it work. And so I haven't read this one, but I'm looking forward to it. But once again, it has these beautiful, pretty sprayed edges. You have the kind of end pages, and then just some little designs on the cover here. But yeah, so this is basically a fantasy romance where a human woman is going to fall in love with the Minotaur, and going along that way. I think it's also like a teacher-student relationship as well. So it'll be interesting to see, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, but yeah. The next one I picked up was also a pretty book that just sounded really good, and that is The Stars Are Dying by Chloe C. I'm gonna butcher this. Peñaranda. I am so sorry if I got that wrong. But this was just kind of like a stunning cover in general that got me, because I do like whatever dark book covers. If you can see, for whatever reason, dark book covers seem to be my jam. And basically, like, the little blurb on the back is, because I don't want to give too much away, 500 years ago, something changed. Everyone felt it, like the world was cracking, like something had stepped into the realm that was never supposed to be there. I think everyone knew that the golden cage the Star Maiden had ushered in was about to be shaken like the stars that began to die out. So basically, when I look at this is going to be another one of like the trials and challenges in a fantasy world, and basically might be an enemies to lovers as well. But what I loved about this is, obviously, of this, you have this beautiful little sprayed edge here. The end paper is just solid, but the cover underneath, look at that. I mean, I loved this. I thought that was so stunning and beautiful, and I loved it. And of course, now I had to own it, because yeah. So this will be interesting to see fantasy romance, enemies to lovers, challenges, and trials and tribulations, and a kingdom at stake. So yeah, we're gonna enjoy that one. Need another little sip. And my coffee's actually getting cold now. And basically the next one I got was Sunbringer by Hannah Kinnear. This is book 2 in the Fallen Gods novel. Book 1 is God Killer. Sorry, there's a lot here. My mind is a jumble now. But this is book 2 in the Fallen God series. Like I said, book 1 is God Killer. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was very interesting, a little slow at times, which is why I think it got 4 stars, but I really liked the premise. The series, the world itself, like, kind of gave me Witcher vibes, of kind of that like darker world with monsters. And basically you have all these different gods. Like, you can have like a little god or a big god based on the amount of worship they receive and prayers they are given. And so you have that. You have a multi kind of POV world where there was a god killer. There was a knight beholden to the king who was like best friends with the king on a quest. And you had this young little girl whose family basically is murdered, and she's kind of on the run trying to figure out what's going on. And she has the cutest little like god with her, and he's a god of lies. And the way that their situation is very different from how the typical gods and humans relationships work. So you just have all these different dynamics, all these different kind of storylines going on, and how they all merge to almost be like a found family-ish to take on a god that is rising to power that should not be. There is plot twists. I don't want to give it away towards the end because I think I read this for my December TBR because I'm planning on reading this for something. And it might have given away some, so I don't really want to do it here. But this is a continuation of that world and of that series and how these characters' paths are going to continue to go on in the past. They're going to find out because there were some twists and turns to what they were fighting for in the first one. And based on what they found out, now their quest has kind of changed. So really interesting. Like I said, strong Witcher vibes. So if you like The Witcher, go ahead and give these a try. Next up is going to be Lovely Corruption, which is the next book in the O'Malley's Mafia Romance series by Katie Robert. I'm liking this series. This is basically Aiden, who I think Aiden is the oldest in the series. And in the last book, he started talking to a cop, which may be detrimental to the Mafia family, but obviously now there's some sort of agreement between him and this female cop, and this is going to be their story where there's going to be some romance involved. So it's very much the opposite ends of the track, as it were, where she is on the lawful side and he is on the not so lawful side. So it's gonna be interesting. These are spicy romance, obviously, but I do, like I've always said, Katie Robert can write some great relationship dynamics. So looking forward to getting the next book in the series underway. And now we are to the last pile. Yay! Basically, I ended up picking up books 2 and 3 in the Terran Soul series, The Lady of Light and Shadows and The King and Sword and Sky. This was an interesting series. It's a little bit older, and you have this fey kind of world. And the Terrans are basically like a fey kingdom, but like there are large giant cats with wings instead of dragons, which, you know, is all kinds of fun. And there is kind of the king among them who is the only human that is able to shift into one of these Terran creatures. And he is going to try to strike up negotiations for a peace treaty with the human kingdom. And when he's there, he discovers his mate. So it's kind of trying to get her to understand and believe that she is his mate, all the while trying to strike a treaty with this kingdom. And there is kind of this underground secret society that is also wanting power, and they are very much anti-Terran. So this is going to be the continuation of that series. I think there is like 5 or 6 books in there, but these are the next 2, so we'll get further into the series with that one. Next up, I ended up getting book 1 in this series, and that is Filthy Rich Vampires. This just sounded kind of interesting. This is kind of like, I think it's arranged marriage vampires, but then it's also like kind of got the fake dating or fake marriage trope in it. I'm assuming it's going to be very spicy. I don't know because I've never really read from Geneva Lee before. But like I said, paranormal, possibly spicy, vampire, arranged marriage, fake marriage, romance. Next up was a pure cover buy, and I think I got this because a while back I got Princess of Souls. I hadn't read it yet, but it sounded interesting. And this one also sounded interesting, but the cover was interesting. So that is The Night Hunt by Alexander Christo. And as you can see, like, this was just an interesting cover. And then if you flip it around, you've got this gentleman on the back here. Not really any sprayed edges or anything else on it, but you have a monster who feeds on fear, and she's the last of her kind. She's trying to escape the wrath of the gods. And then basically I'm assuming the boy on the back here, or the man on the back here, is a herald who does the messages and ferrying of the dead as punishment for a past that he can't remember. And so basically the two of them seem like they're going to strike up a deal to try to help one another get their freedoms, and there might be some romance along the way. But like I said, it had just had a stunning cover to it. Then the story was just kind of interesting because you don't really see a female monster that feeds on fear. I I think there is one, and I can't remember it right now. There is one major series, and it's like a female character that she is a fear demon. But for the life of me, I cannot remember that series right now. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but yeah, so this one was interesting, and I wanted to take a chance on it, so that's what we're gonna do. So I ended up getting, where was it? Somewhere down here. I keep looking behind me because, so I ended up getting the High Mountain Court, and I actually really enjoyed the writing style and the story there, and I will continue with that series. But I wanted to take a chance on a different series by the same author, and that was A.K. Mulford. So I ended up getting A River of Golden Bones. And this is basically described to, like, on the back it says, if you were Sleeping Beauty's twin, lusting over your sister's big bad wolf fiance, forced on a journey in Howl's Moving Castle in order to kill the Wicked Witch. I think that says it all. Like, I think that's it. Like, you have me. You have me. So this is basically going to be, I'm not even going to read any more on that because I felt like that was just pretty explanatory for why I picked up the book. Also, you know, it had a pretty interesting different cover, and like I said, I liked the author's other stories, so we're gonna go for it because that blurb intrigued the heck out of me. So yeah. Next up, I picked up The Hemlock Queen by Hannah Whitten. This is obviously the sequel to The Foxglove Queen. Oh no, I'm sorry, The Foxglove King. The one thing that I'm a little upset with is that this is hardcover and the first book was a paperback. And as far as I know, this is only released in hardcover right now and I want to read it. So we ended up getting it, and I ended up getting it on sale because I think Book Outlet was having like their $5.99 hardcover sale. This is going to be the continuation of, basically you have a young girl who is raised in the catacombs by this kind of women's cult, I guess you would see. They worshipped the goddess of darkness and death, and she's been keeping her powers, like she has a power over shadows or something in the world, and basically she lives out in the regular world where her power she has to keep secret because she can revive the dead with her powers. Lo and behold, she gets found out and she's brought into the kingdom, and she's told she's going to be needed to fight because there's darkness and shadows coming. And you end up finding out that not all is what it seems, and there are different powers at play, maybe trying to make a pass for the kingdom. You also have a sort of love triangle going on between the main female character, the prince, who's set to inherit the kingdom, who is a little bit of a playboy and flirt. And then you have this young kind of protege of like the clergy, that he's a little bit more of like rule-oriented, goal-oriented. I like him more. I'm not gonna lie. I like him more. But lo and behold, it's the end of book one. We still don't know which way it's gonna go. There were some very interesting twists along the way. Not too unpredictable. They were a little predictable, but still really good to read. So I am definitely picking up the sequel to get more into that series. So next up, I ended up getting another book two in a series, and that is book two in The Infatuated Fae by Janine O'Reilly, and that is What Did You Do? So this is the follow-up to, or book two in the series for How Do You Feel? And I ended up giving that one 4 stars. It was a low 4 stars. For a long time, I was kind of bored because you basically had the main character who she's into like fungi and moths, and it was just really weird because there was a lot of science focus on migrations and mushrooms and things, and I was just like, what the heck is going on? And then even when she kind of falls through the rabbit hole, so to speak, and ends up in the Fae Kingdom, it just kind of felt like a little weird. It didn't feel like there was really much to it. But then it started to pick up, and when it started to pick up, it just went with it, and it pulled me in, and it left me being like, okay. Where you kind of knew what the ending could be, and when it did happen, you were like, kind of knew it, but yeah. So definitely continuing on. It surprised me because, like I said, there were points where almost early on I didn't know if I was going to even want to continue with the book, because it was almost reading like textbooky with all the information that I was finding out about, like moths' behavior patterns and their migration styles and seasons, and their life cycles, and the fungi that they can use to make whatever's because of parasitic, what, like it was just all this stuff on that I was just like, I got this because it was a fantasy romance. The fantasy romance does kick in, so if you do pick it up, just bear with it for a little bit. It does make sense, and you will understand as you read why they give you that information and how it plays into the story later on. So that made it more worthwhile as well. So this is going to be book 2 in the series, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go through, because you have the Unseelie and the Seelie kingdoms caught up in battle, and how the main characters all kind of caught up in this love triangle, if you will. So yeah, we'll continue with that. So of course I told you that Trisha Levenseller has kind of been like winning me over, and I already did the other 2 books early on, but we ended up picking up another pretty book, and that is The Darkness Within Us by Trisha Levenseller. And obviously a very kind of pretty sprayed edges here. Wonderful map in the end page. We love a good map. And then this kind of embossed cover. So once again, another pretty book. But basically, I think this is going to be similar to the Shadows Between Us, because it does kind of give that vibes where you have this kind of kingdom. You have a girl who's hiding her intelligence and ambitions, and she might not be like the nice little girl, whatever. She's become a wealthy duchess. She has an elderly husband who passes away. And then basically what's going to go on when the supposed estranged grandson of her past husband is wanting to fight for the inheritance in the kingdom. So it's probably going to be this kind of enemies to lovers, spicy kind of romance between this girl who's fighting for her independence and inheritance from being married to a huge age gap, and then with his grandson. So interesting. But she does have a good writing style, and I really liked it. So we're going to pick this one up and add it to the pretty book collection. And speaking of pretty books, we got another one. This was on my mind for a long time. I had seen it all over BookTube. And I wanted to get the sprayed edges version of it. So I was trying to find it, and I did end up finding it on sale. And that is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I had loved this cover because I know there were different covers, but I loved this cover. It has gorgeous, look at that. Gorgeous sprayed edges. The end papers is just kind of like this. I feel like this is very much like turn of the century hardcovers, and then just a stunning kind of embellishment on the cover there. This one, like I said, it's got good reviews all over all over basically a bunch of different social medias. And basically you have a young girl who reads, which obviously we're in favor of. And she basically starts to find out that the monsters and myths and fairies and things that she reads about might actually be real. And so on the back it says, but if fairies and monsters were real, so were the women who defeated them. So it just sounded really good. Like I said, it had good reviews, and it's a beautifully stunning book. So we're taking a chance on that one. Next up, and we are almost done, I ended up getting another Ruby Dixon book because, like I said, she got me with the Ice Planet Barbarians. Then we're moving on to a possible Minotaur romance. So this one was a little bit more interesting because it isn't as crazy of a scenario, at least in my mind, as I would think for a romance. And this is Bound to the Shadow Prince. And this is basically another monster hero romantasy, but in this one you have a princess who has to protect her kingdom from a vengeful goddess. She's to remain locked in a tower for 7 years. She's not really like the kind to give herself up, but when her kingdom's at stake, what choice does she have? And she's basically locked in the tower with an enemy warrior, complete with wings and claws and fangs. And so this is basically both of them stuck in an isolated tower, and he is some sort of fayish creature. And what kind of spice can ensue from that? I'm like, it's not like we've heard those tropes that cause stuff to happen. But yeah, so it sounded good. And then, like I said, it's Ruby Dixon, so I know it's going to be all kinds of fun. And then the last book is one I actually ended up picking up yesterday. I was telling myself, I was like, no, don't buy any more books. But I couldn't resist when I saw this one. And that is The Half King by Melissa Landers. And basically you have a betrayal that changes everything in the Allied realm. Long ago, the kingdom's noble houses rose up against the goddess, and for their treachery, the firstborn of each noble family is cursed, one with perilous beauty, one with destructive knowledge, and one with insatiable bloodlust. And basically you have, I'm assuming it's going to be different POVs, maybe. Let me check and see. It doesn't say if it's going to be different POVs, but basically you are going to have all these like cursed beings come together, and there's going to be possibly some romance going on in this situation and how they might need to break the curses. And it says, but there is only one way to save a dying king, and it lies with the one person who's hiding the biggest secret of all, Cerise, who I'm assuming she gets the beauty because it seems like she has quite the following to her. But it was interesting because you have all these cursed individuals, so it's not like they're perfect kind of princes and princesses and whatever. So it's going to be curses, enemies to lovers, fae, fantasy kingdom, gods, goddesses, all that type of stuff. And obviously I loved the color scheme. It had some interesting, that one's not sprayed, which is interesting now that I look about it, but the top sprayed, that's sprayed. This, don't know what happened there. And then obviously it's the end paper that got me on this one, because yeah, I loved that. I thought that was great. And then you have this kind of beautiful cover as well. But it was the end papers that got me, let's be real. And I have learned my lesson after wanting to get this one and then not being able to find it for so long, that I have learned that if it sounds really, really good and it has really pretty, things, then buy it. Which is not good to my bank account. But that is that. This is everything that we have gotten all throughout the fall. I know fall is still kind of going on. Technically, I think like December 21st is supposed to be the first day of winter, but I don't care. December is winter. December is winter. The beginning of December is winter, and I know I'm not alone in thinking that. So, yeah, that is everything. That is a lot. We are going to have some good times ahead of us with everything that we've bought. So, but like I said, I have used gift cards. I have used point systems. I have gotten on discount bookstores. I have shopped the sales, so to speak. So I am not going crazy because, yeah, books can be expensive. So it's not an inexpensive hobby at all. But you know what? If the stories are fantastic, I don't mind it, because I love supporting the people who write it and come up with the stories, because that ain't easy. But yeah, let me know if any of these looked interesting to you, if you have read some of the ones that I have not read, if there are any that you think I should prioritize and try to get through before I tackle others. Let me know in the comments below, and let me know if there are other books that I did not get that you have seen out there that were beautiful and stunning, or that just really had a great like fantasy romance kind of trope to it. And I might add those to my list for next time. But yeah, I hope all is well with you guys. Stay warm. Like I said, it was freezing outside, so I am going to probably go and turn on my portable heater and just make sure I stay toasty. And then just get to editing on this for you guys. So yeah, hope all is well with you, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.